All right, here we go again. Hi, everybody. It's Stephanie from Flyleaf, Kim from Flyleaf, Allie from Flyleaf, and we are here for Flyleaf Talks About Stuff because we like to talk about the things that we want to talk about.
Hi.
Boo, Allie. No, just kidding.
Hey, Kim.
That's not what I meant.
It's Kim's here.
Kim's
here.
No, Kim's up top. Allie's down on the bottom.
No, we're not.
Boo
I'm
and
to the
yay.
right, and Allie's on the bottom.
It's like the Brady Bunch.
You got your Brady Bunch squares all mixed up.
I try.
Okay.
How are you guys?
Good. I'm good. How about you, Allie?
Fantastic.
I'm good.
Nice.
What's our topic?
Fear.
Oh,
A moment of lightness before we talk about something serious, huh? Fear.
Yeah, fear, and how I think it came up a couple of times recently for me, in talking with folks, that fear is such a basic feeling that we have, and we do everything we can do to steer away from it or to react to it, that sometimes it just looks crazy in our lives and we look like crazy people, and it impacts our ability to attach to people.
right. It's a big emotion.
It's huge.
And it's primal, right? I mean, it's going back to infancy.
Yeah. And it isn't always bad. Sometimes fear drives us to be successful. The fear of failure will drive us to do everything we could do to succeed. I mean, sometimes it can be our driver, but when we're driven by fear, it's exhausting.
Right. But even that drive to be successful or that fear of failure can actually be disinhibiting or inhibiting, I guess, because then you have to worry about perfectionism and all kinds of things. I saw an acronym one time, though, about fear, and it was fear, face everything and rise, or FEAR, or fear everything and run.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've also heard false evidence appearing real, FEAR.
False evidence appearing real. Oh, that fits.
It does.
Yeah.
False evidence.
It works.
Oh yeah, sorry, I had to spell it.
Yeah, I don't have an acronym. I'm sorry. I didn't come prepared. I didn't do my homework.
No, I had two. You can have one.
Okay, thank you. But one of the things in my work with people in toxic relationships and domestic violence relationships in particular is that people ask all the time, why do women stay? Why do women stay? And fear is a big driver, but fear is layered in those relationships. So sometimes it's fear that if I leave, I'm going to be harmed in some way. Sometimes it's I stay here and I kind of feel like I have a sense of control and I know what's going on, but if I leave, I don't know what I'm stepping out into. So it's fear of the unknown that keeps people staying. And that whole uncertainty is a big driver for people to stay in situations that really aren't safe for them. That's just one example, but we see that a lot in other areas too.
Yeah, we'll see fear, like if we're working with couples if I'm going to go into talking about recovering couples, the addict will be a primal fear for them is that they're never going to be seen outside of somebody who injured their beloved, right? And then for the partner, their two fears are, if I choose to move forward with you, it's somehow going to nullify any of the pain that I have. And my fear that if I forgive you, it's going to give you permission to hurt me again.
Right. And what was it you were saying, Allie, earlier about leaning in and empathy?
For sure. Like for empathy to be possible, we have to be able to take the perspective of another and to be willing to step out of our own maybe tunnel vision of why what I'm feeling and thinking is so important, because this is what's keeping me safe. And I put air quotes around it because there might be other alternatives, but to the person who believes these things, that is absolute truth. So to be able to take the perspective of another and say, is there another way to look at this, can be scary, but also the outcomes of what you discover can be really, really scary too.
And what kind of outcomes of that?
Well, maybe you held this deep held belief that XYZ was true and the other person believed XYZ, but that's not true. It's really ABC, like a betrayed partner, that when my spouse doesn't come home or act predictably, it's because they're out doing something to hurt me, rather than maybe it was just a misunderstanding and maybe there was something else going on, but they respond or can respond from that very fear-based place of here it comes again.
Well, and then the other part is that leaning in and taking the other's perspective sometimes means you have to look at yourself from the other person's perspective. And a lot of people don't have the fortitude to hold that mirror up to themselves and to sit in it and to see that, you know, here I thought all of my behaviors were only impacting me, and I rationalized my behaviors by saying this is something that I do for myself because I like to do it. And then you realize it really impacts everybody. And there's something really scary about that too. And being, what's the word? It's not authentic. Owning your stuff without making excuses for it. What is that word? It begins with the R, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. It'll come to me and I'll just blurt it out of the middle of nowhere. I'll just like Tourette's it out. So, what is it?
No, I'm wanting to know what it is.
It'll come to me. I don't know why. It's one of those words that I never can remember, and it's super simple, probably like tying your shoe or something. I don't know, but I'll remember it.
So we're kind of living in a really I think fear is a primary feeling that a lot of people are experiencing right now for whatever reasons, right?
Yeah. And I think when we see that bipolar fear, meaning not bipolar people, but that bipolar fear, meaning I'm over here and you're over here, and they're angry with each other, that anger often is a result of fear. It's fear-based. I'm not safe and you're making me not safe. Or I am safe and the only way I can stay safe is to keep everybody away from me and push everybody away so don't come near me because I'm making myself safe. And so those are we see a lot of that fear-driven behavior right now. It's sad.
Right.
But if people could empathize with, yes, I see anger outwardly, but I'm holding a curious space for what else is going on here, you know, because it might not be anger. It might be deep sadness. It might be fear. You know, that's what we're talking about, where you look angry, but maybe you're really, really fearful. Mm-hmm. And like my favorite analogy of that is like from the animal kingdom. If y'all are on Facebook and you've seen those, like the dodo videos of dog rescues, like they'll have a little puppy cornered and it will be growling and snarling or very, very angry looking. But as soon as it's treated with a little bit of love and tenderness, it's like, oh baby, you weren't angry. You were just really scared.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we're able to extend grace.
Right.
Yes. What happens to us when someone comes at us with anger is that we react with like either anger, or we react by pulling away. That's kind of the purpose of anger for some people, is to push people away. So we react by pulling away. But what they really want when fear is underlying is they want us to lean in. Right. So if we can see what's going on underneath that outward behavior, it makes it a lot easier to sit in that empathic place and lean in and have some compassion for people.
We'll find that when we're working with couples, because if one of them gets, like large in anger and is yelling or is just kind of frustrated, the automatic response or that the other partner has is to pull back and to shut down. Well, when you navigate that with them in session, the one partner who got really large in anger was saying, I needed you to move closer to me because I was so in a state of distress at that time. And that partner was, but I didn't know that. All I saw was you getting really, really agitated, and then I had to save myself in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. And let's not forget the physiological that happens when we are afraid, you know, that maybe everything in our brains and our bodies are telling us to like run the other way or fight back. And if we're using that part of our brain, then we're not using the other beautiful parts, because we can't at that moment, you know. Our brains and bodies are so beautifully connected.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we've talked about this before. They're geared for survival, right? And fear alerts you that something is not safe. So we are physiologically, without even thinking about it, we react to it. And, you know, I think when we talk about, you're talking about partners healing and taking the other's perspective and noticing where they're coming from. I always use the analogy of, if like I in my office have a table in between two chairs and I have various things on the table. And I always say, if I ask you to draw a picture of what you see on your side and I draw what I see on my side, are they going to be the same picture? And of course the answer is no. And I said, but can I argue that I'm right and you're right too? And of course we can argue all day long, but we're never going to resolve anything until I look at their picture and go, oh, there was a pen hiding behind that, whatever. Or they say, oh, there was a paper clip over there. You know, like we're never, ever going to end the argument of who's right if we don't take on the other perspective. And we're never going to be wrong because both sides are right. So it's hard because you can both be right and neither be wrong, but just be different.
Right, both exist in the same space. It's no
Right.
different from those pictures that if do you see the old woman or do you see the beautiful silhouette? Like, I mean,
Right.
both of those are in there, right? Yeah.
In pop culture, was the dress white and gold or black and blue? Did you hear Yenny or did you hear Laurel?
Right.
And there's like some shoe going around too right now. I don't know.
There's a shoe. I didn't know that one.
Going around now.
Oh, the blue shoe.
Yeah.
Is it teal? I saw that with my little siblings. There was a huge discussion at the table.
I don't know what that's about. I missed that one. And the dress was gold and white, by the way.
It was. I saw gold and white too.
Yeah.
I don't.
And I heard Laurel.
But I guess the point of the matter is that everybody's right, though.
Yeah.
You know, we can still be right and have completely different views, and neither one of us be wrong. We just have to take some perspective from the other side in order to find some of that middle ground. And you might find there's information missing.
Right.
And all you needed was some bits of information to make it all come together.
Right.
I think the biggest piece of information is that ability to connect with somebody else on how they might be feeling.
Yeah.
Because we're all human and fear is primal. So we've all known that feeling intimately at one time or another.
Yeah.
Because we're wired to feel it, because it is evolutionarily beneficial to fear things.
Right.
Yeah. So I've told you guys this story, and I will tell it again. I was this was months ago. This was when COVID first kind of started to be a thing, and it wasn't really a big thing yet. And I was at a outdoor farmer's market with one of my girlfriends. And a woman came up with a mask on, and not many people there were wearing them. I mean, we're outside, and it was one of those things, just didn't have a lot of information, but she started yelling at everybody, like screaming at the top of her lungs at everybody in there. And she kept yelling 6 feet apart or 6 feet under, and was screaming at everybody. And people were looking at her like, what is wrong with you, woman? I mean, there wasn't even that many people there, and it was just kind of weird. And all I could see, I guess through my therapist lens, was this panicked woman who was so in fear of her life and everybody else's life that she couldn't contain herself to not say something in that moment. And it came out as just this outburst. But I think some people feel that same level of panic about things, but they close in and they feel like they can't speak. So it doesn't always look the same.
Right.
But it's there.
Right.
And it can be big either way.
It can be big inward and it can be big outward.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But what do you think the biggest challenge of dealing with fear and healing is?
Acknowledging it.
Right.
Because sometimes fear can bring with it a sense of powerlessness, a sense of hopelessness. A lot of kind of negative cognitions is, like I am powerless, I am hopeless. And it can tie back to lots of different things. And it's a lot easier to like pull the ostrich head in the sand, don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
But if it's so prevalent kind of like everywhere right now, there's lots of fear for lots of different reasons. It can be really hard to acknowledge it, but also really exhausting to hide and run from it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, when we're doing especially trauma work, sometimes we always gauge somebody's level of distress on a 0 to 10 scale, right? So 0 is no distress about the event and 10 is the most distress you can feel about the event. And sometimes people will get to about a 2 and then they get stuck. And when we start exploring why it is that they're kind of holding on and hovering at 2, most of the time I find that it's fear-based. If I go all the way to the 0, then somebody is going to think I've forgiven something that I don't want to forgive. If I go all the way to the 0, I'm going to forget how to protect myself. If I go all the way to the 0, I'm going to forget my loved one who passed away. I have to hold on to a piece of this because the fear of not having these feelings or this event or whatever gain it is, the fear of not having that is so much that they can't go all the way towards healing. And so taking that leap, going, okay, I'm going to give it a shot and see what happens, and realizing that not having a charge about something doesn't mean that you forget it. It just means it doesn't give you that charge.
Right.
It doesn't mean it goes away. So I think when we're doing trauma, that's one of the biggest plays in how I see fear playing out.
Yeah. In couples work, it's a lot of the fear that if I move towards you, you're not going to meet me in the movement, right? So there's that whole, I need to see what it is that you're doing before I take a step, and then you're just at a stalemate. Then you're the Zax. And no healing happens that way. There's the vulnerability in dealing with fear.
Yeah. I see that too. I see what you're talking about. I usually send them to you when I see that though, but that, you know, I've been saying no for so long, and you've been saying no for so long. I don't want to be the first person to say yes, because what if you don't respond with yes? Then I've put myself out there and you've just pushed me back away again, or you've rejected my bid for your affection. And I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Fear of vulnerability, mayhaps?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And what's nice though is when you're able to point out, you know, I'm talking about couples specifically, but when you're able to point out, like, you guys are more on the same page than not, because fear has just set in between the two of you. Once you're able to recognize, oh, okay, we're both afraid, then healing really can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and we know the definition of being brave, right? Is to be afraid of something and to do it anyway, and to take that leap.
Right.
And we get a chance to see that all the time.
We do.
Chance to sit in that fear with somebody and watch them just go, okay, I'm going to do this. And then they do it. And then it's such a beautiful thing. And we get to see acts of bravery every day.
Every day.
Yeah, without fear, there is no bravery.
Right. All right, final thoughts. Fear.
Yeah, I think I just said mine, I guess. But that's a really nice one. Without fear, there isn't bravery. And we, you know, we got to acknowledge that and give it its due. It's such a big part of our lives and who we are.
Yeah. I think mine would just be, it doesn't have to be paralyzing. Mm-hmm. There's opportunity for movement and growth in there.
Yeah.
And a lot of healing. You know us. Yay, healing.
Right, Allie.
I don't have a final thought. I have a brain fart instead.
Yeah, well, why don't you send us home?
I'll send you guys home. So thank you guys for tuning in for another Flyleaf Talks About Stuff, where we talk about the stuff that's important to us that might help you. You can find us on Facebook by searching for Flyleaf Counseling. You can find us on Instagram by searching for Flyleaf_counseling. Visit our website at www.flyleafcounseling.com. And I think that's it.
I just want to hear Kim say the Insta.
Okay. We can be found on the Insta at Flyleaf_counseling. Is it cringy?
Someone calls it the Insta. It's just Insta.
I know. My son, every time I do that, he's just like, no. He's like, that's not even a thing.
So you're saying that
that one is my 14-year-old son's favorite thing that I do.
So you're saying that your son is fearful of every Tuesday and Wednesday when we do these videos because you're going to say the Insta.
The Insta.
I love it.
Look at Allie's face. That's the look I get from him every time I do it.
Nice.
That's like saying the interwebs.
All right, we got to go.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.